beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. I now come to the adjournment debate and Graeme Downie.
Hear, hear.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Scotland's history is intertwined with our coastal communities. From shipbuilding in the Clyde to fishing in Peterhead and Fraserburgh, these areas helped fuel the UK's growth as a global power. Closer to my home, the Forth Estuary has a proud industrial legacy. Longannet Power Station near Kincardine once powered UK industry, and to this day the Babcock Dockyard at Rosyth plays a pivotal role in naval shipbuilding. The Forth remains an active and busy waterway, with tankers and barges constantly on the move. Nonetheless, Madam Deputy Speaker, the decline in industry in the Forth is obvious and in common with other areas. In some places, this industry has been partially replaced by tourism, with 9 million visitors coming to Fife last year and contributing £570 million to the local economy. As Scotland's historic... I'm happy to give way to the honourable gentleman.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the honourable member for Dunfermline and Dollar for bringing this forward? I spoke to him beforehand this morning. First of all, congratulations on getting the second adjournment debate within 2 weeks. Well done. That's fantastic. As the honourable gentleman will know, that he and I, believe it or not, if we go back far enough, are Gaelic cousins. I'm descended from the stewards of the lowlands of Scotland, and they came across to Northern Ireland. So it's very important to us to have that relationship, tourism way, between us and Northern Ireland and across the sea. Would the member not agree that greater support and funding for the ferry service and thereby for tourism between our two great countries would only yield greater connectivity and prosperity for both our nations? I know many people from my constituency go to Scotland every year for a holiday. I'm sure the same thing would be for members returning back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I thank the honourable member for that intervention? I couldn't agree more than I was had the pleasure to be in Belfast just a couple of weeks ago for a family occasion. I was not able to take the ferry on that occasion. Sadly, I had to fly. It was a short trip, but I couldn't agree more with the point he makes. And indeed, for coastal communities in my own constituency like Kincardine, Curris, Torryburn, tourism is indeed a welcome industry, with the Fife Coastal Path and the Pilgrim's Way welcoming thousands of people a year to enjoy the beautiful Fife coastline. And across Scotland, Madam Deputy Speaker, in 2022, marine and coastal tourism was worth £633 million, providing a total of 31,000 jobs. However, for these communities, tourism, while welcome, can be difficult as well, with villages which were never designed to deal with hundreds or thousands of visitors, sometimes feeling swamped, with locals understandably resentful. This has not been aided over the years by SNP cuts to local council budgets, delaying upgrades to critical infrastructure, including roads, paths, play parks and other local facilities. Hear, hear. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, our coastal communities are not just and should not be just scenic backdrops. They are economic powerhouses, cultural treasures and key players in our green future. They need our continued support and investment. In August this year, the Prime Minister said, "Our coastal communities are the lifeblood of Britain's maritime economy. From supporting international trade to driving innovation in renewable energies, these areas must be at the heart of our plans to build a stronger, greener and more prosperous future for the UK."
Will you give way?
I'm happy to give way to the Honourable Friend.
Can I congratulate the Honourable Member for Dunfermline Dollar for obtaining a second adjournment debate? And will he agree with me that in this transition away from industrial ports towards tourism, that governments, both governments, UK and Scottish, must invest in avoiding the pressure of hot tourism hotspots, that we must use the full force of both governments and capital to invest and change our ports to make them fit for the green transition to renewables, and that the challenge of climate change means that we must defend our coastal communities and invest in our coastal communities in causeways like the Balashare Causeway in my constituency, and in ports and harbours all round the coast to make sure they are defended from rising tides and the effects of climate change.
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and once again I couldn't agree more with him. Again, from one of the most beautiful parts of the world, which he has the pleasure to represent. I've been able to spend a little bit of time there, but I think he is absolutely correct about the challenges our coastal communities are facing, and that is indeed the green jobs through programmes such as Great British Energy, where there is a huge potential to do that. We must always make sure that is done with sensitivity and in partnership with communities wherever we can. Madam Deputy Speaker, as I was saying, the Prime Minister is someone obviously I would always choose to agree with, and much with his views on coastal communities and the maritime economy, I could not agree with him more. The National Wealth Fund announced by the Chancellor of the Exchequer is a potentially transformative opportunity for our coastal communities, with at least £5.8 billion of the NWF's capital focusing on sectors such as ports, green hydrogen, carbon capture, gigafactories and green steel. I'm happy to give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
I also congratulate the Honourable Member for securing this debate as well. On the point on offshore renewables that I know he's coming to, that obviously Scottish communities have got a huge amount to contribute to that in the future. Does he agree with me that we need to look for inclusion into the European energy markets, for a market for that far expanded offshore renewables? And will he also agree with me that we'll need to look into the issue of transmission charging? That I know is something that he'll be aware of as well.
Gentleman, for that intervention. I think perhaps some additional cooperation we are seeing between the UK and Scottish governments, with the UK Labour government in power, and resetting that relationship. I believe there's absolutely opportunities to work together for the benefit of all parts of the United Kingdom on energy. Madam Deputy Speaker, in 2022, passenger and freight water transport was worth £250 million to the Scottish economy and supported 1,600 jobs. The Port of Rosyth in my constituency currently handles 600,000 tonnes of bulk cargo, ranging across a range of different incomes, something that has been much needed in the last week, including road salt, which of course we've seen in Fife definitely required, as I found on my trip to the airport earlier on this week. In addition, the Port of Rosyth works with oil and gas companies for the import and export of vital industrial components. And when I was near the port recently, you could also see turbine blades and other components for renewable energy sitting on the dockside, a sign of the future, hopefully, for my constituency. The Rosyth waterfront, currently being cleaned up by Muir Group in Scarborough, was once home to a 250,000-tonne capacity concrete tank, 5,000-tonne steel tanks, all used to fuel the fleet during World War II. The future development of this site offers a further exciting glimpse into the possible future of the Fife coast with the required sustained investment. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Green Freeport has exciting plans up and down the Forth Estuary and on both sides, with plans for Rosyth including additional freight and passenger transport, improved rail link options, all of which take freight off the roads, while at the same time providing new jobs and helping us on the pathway to achieving net zero. Madam Deputy Speaker, in the longer-term trend, the Scottish marine economy fell by 14% between 2013 and 2022, a shocking decline, one which both the SNP and Tory governments must carry the can. We must do more to support our coastal economy, and there is one specific measure I would like to focus the remainder of my time. Madam Deputy Speaker, between 2002 and 2018, there was a direct ferry line from Rosyth to Zeebrugge, operating as a passenger and freight service, and latterly as a freight-only service. I believe, as many of my constituents do, that now is the time to bring this project back, and to that end I've held several discussions with those coordinating these efforts, as well as with DFDS, who have said they would like to bring this service back as soon as spring 2025, but instead travelling between Rosyth and Dunkirk. Additional investment in the port at Dunkirk already, including facilities and additional upgrading of freight and rail, means that there is an optimal moment to bring this service back from Scotland to Europe. The facilities at Dunkirk are ready, and the National Wealth Fund would appear to me to be the ideal opportunity for this government to take the lead on developing the facilities at Rosyth that are needed to make that happen. And Madam Deputy Speaker, never mind £5.8 billion, it could take as little as £3 million investment in Rosyth to bring back a regular passenger and freight service between Scotland and mainland Europe. But time is of the essence if this is to be fully realised. With £3 million of funding, we can get a jump start on all of this as soon as spring 2025. This government has said it wants to move quickly with investments that deliver. To my mind, there is no better example of that than getting a passenger and freight ferry back up and running between Scotland and mainland Europe, with Rosyth perfectly positioned for this service. The infrastructure needed is not extensive. All that is needed is to improve some of the roads for access, space for new security checks, and installation of power and associated works. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is estimated that a direct ferry link would carry 51,000 passengers per year, rising to 79,000, and bring an additional £11.5 million spend to the Scottish economy each year. On freight, it is estimated the route would begin by carrying 22,000 freight units per year, taking 8.2 million kilometres of freight traffic off UK roads, with a corresponding reduction in carbon emissions. Madam Deputy Speaker, that kind of increased passenger and freight links that I want to see in Rosyth would not only revitalise the economy in my constituency, but across Fife more broadly, and would support the government's net zero ambitions while underpinning the Scotland Office plans for Brand Scotland, selling Scotland to the world. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have spoken to major employers in the constituency, including Amazon and Maui, who have both said they would welcome this ferry link as it would help their contribution to the local economy. In the case of Maui, they are a key part of the Scotland Office's Brand Scotland efforts by promoting and selling Scottish salmon to the world. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are other hurdles that would need to be overcome in order to finalise bringing the service back to Rosyth, including addressing the failure of the SNP Scottish Government to amend the necessary legislation that would allow border control at Grangemouth to be used for Rosyth for certain freight. There is also the matter of the delay by the Scottish Government confirming Transport Scotland funding for the waterborne freight grant. Madam Deputy Speaker, while the SNP continue to delay and make excuses on their end, this Labour Government does have the opportunity to jumpstart... I'm happy to give way to the honourable gentleman again.
First of all, the member makes a really good point about that Rosyth connection. It's really important, and I pay tribute to him, but I'll also pay tribute to his predecessor as well for the good work, and I know that he's always good-natured about these things. He'll notice that neighbouring Ireland has opened up over a dozen such routes. Why does he think that is? And does he think that membership of the single market would be enormously helpful to opening up some of these routes and further benefiting our coastal communities?
The honourable gentleman for his intervention. He is absolutely right. I should indeed pay tribute to my predecessor, Douglas Chapman, who did much to champion this cause. I think my point I'm making here is that we can do this in the current situation, and that is what I believe we should be doing as quickly as possible. Madam Deputy Speaker, this debate is about how to get investment back into our coastal communities, and what better opportunity than to bring a passenger and freight link between Rosyth and Central Europe. As I've discussed with the Minister who will be responding prior to this evening's debate, I had written to the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the start of October, but only received a reply very recently, and I suspect only because of this debate indeed being on the order paper. This in itself I was disappointed in, but particularly given the small amount of money and the deadline to make this project a reality in 2025. I, of course, do not expect the Minister to be able to make any commitments this evening, and certainly not to speak on behalf of the Treasury. However, I do believe it's critical this Government delivers for Scotland in a visible and meaningful way as quickly as possible, progressing projects which further brand Scotland, an absolutely fantastic policy programme of selling Scotland to the world, benefiting people across my constituency and across Scotland. So can I ask the Minister, when he's responding, what action the Scotland Office can take to bring the correct partners round the table to make this Rosyth to Dunkirk ferry a possibility as quickly as possible, so that at least the option can be seriously explored of bringing this back in 2025. Madam Deputy Speaker, whether it's restoring the Rosyth ferry, addressing infrastructure challenges or unlocking the potential of initiatives like the Green Freeports, now is the time we must act. By working together, we can ensure that our coastal communities thrive for generations to come.
Mr Martin McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I first start by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Dunfermline and Dollar, for securing this debate, and as others have mentioned, it's his second in just a matter of weeks, and I think the member for Strangford might have some competition for adjournment debates soon. And as an MP from a coastal constituency myself, I'm very pleased to respond on behalf of the Government this evening. I'm sure the whole House will agree with me when I say that we are blessed in the UK with a wonderful coastline, and no more so than in Scotland. And as much as it might pain me as the MP for Inverclyde and Renfrewshire West to admit that there are some beautiful stretches of coastline that aren't in reach of Wemyss Bay, Inverkip, Greenock, Gourock or Port Glasgow, I will grudgingly admit to my honourable friend that the Fife coastline is indeed beautiful, and as he has highlighted this evening, also has the potential to contribute to the growth of our economy. This is particularly through our world-class ports, and we've heard this evening from my honourable friend his own proposal for Rosyth that he is championing, and I will return to that later. Ports will play a crucial role in the development and deployment of offshore energy projects, essential to meeting our clean energy mission, as well as facilitating international trade, vital to meeting our mission of turbocharging economic growth. So it is absolutely right that we support these communities with the infrastructure that they need to thrive. That is why the UK Government has announced the creation of the National Wealth Fund, backed with £7.3 billion, and that includes £5.8 billion of capital funding for 5 priority sectors, including port infrastructure. This will drive investment in ports across the country, delivering the change we need to achieve our mission of growing the economy. The National Wealth Fund will build on the work of the UK Infrastructure Bank, which has a strong track record of investing in port infrastructure across the UK. Indeed, the National Wealth Fund is providing £50 million, which has been matched by the Scottish National Investment Bank towards a £100 million joint credit facility for Ardussie Airport. And this project demonstrates the potential of our National Wealth Fund investments. This site is currently the largest brownfield port in the UK, but when complete, it will become a nationally significant infrastructure facility spanning 450 acres. This game-changing investment will redevelop the port, developing its capacity to deploy offshore wind infrastructure at an industrial scale, driving forward our net zero ambitions. And let me be clear to my honourable friend and to other members this evening, this project is just a start, and further details on securing National Wealth Fund funding will be set out in due course. My honourable friend has set out his vision for the Port of Versailles this evening, and I would be delighted to assist him alongside officials in the Scotland Office in his engagement with the National Wealth Fund for projects in his constituency. My right honourable friend, the Chancellor, has been crystal clear. If growth is the challenge, investment is the solution. That is why this government will invest in the jobs, industries and infrastructure of the future through the National Wealth Fund and through GB Energy. And alongside this, our new industrial strategy, currently being developed by the UK Government in consultation with the Scottish Government, sets a credible 10-year plan to deliver the certainty and stability businesses need to invest in the high-growth sectors that will drive our growth mission. The strategy will take advantage of the UK's unique strengths and untapped potential, enabling our already world-leading sectors to adapt and grow and seizing opportunities to lead in new and emerging areas. Many of the priority sectors identified in the emerging strategy, such as clean energy and defence, will directly benefit and build on the strengths of our coastal communities. And the strategy will take a place-based approach, driving growth in towns, cities and regions around Britain. And we will work tirelessly to deliver growth through this strategy for communities across the UK. And we'll also look internationally for opportunities. As my honourable friend set out this evening, increasing export markets for Scottish businesses are crucial for our success, and that's why we're committed to promoting Brand Scotland around the world. Indeed, my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Scotland, is currently in South East Asia, where he is meeting businesses and government ministers to encourage investment here at home. But we cannot go it alone. As others have said, we must work closely with the Scottish Government, combining our respective powers to deliver on these ambitions, which is why we are resetting the relationship with the Scottish Government. And across a range of areas, we are working together with them to deliver for communities and strengthen our economy. We are backing the Scottish Government to deliver with a record block grant of £47.7 billion for 2025-26, with a further £3.4 billion via the Barnett formula. This is the largest settlement in real terms since devolution began. Because of the decisions that this government has taken, we have been able to confirm the UK Government's commitment to invest nearly £1.4 billion into important local projects across Scotland over the next 10 years, which I am delighted to say includes £26 million for the fourth Freeport, subject to full business case approval. The fourth Green Freeport is expected to support thousands of jobs and bring in millions of pounds of investment across its sites in Edinburgh, in Fife and in Falkirk. Indeed, local partners estimate that it could create up to 34,500 jobs and generate £7.9 billion of private and public investment over the next decade. My honourable friend mentioned that he has written to the Treasury regarding possible upgrades to the Port of Versailles. I am aware that the Chancellor has recently responded to his correspondence, and as I said earlier, I would be delighted to assist in engaging with the National Wealth Fund. And further to this, if you would like a further discussion with the Treasury on this subject, I'd be happy to facilitate a meeting with my noble friend, the Financial Secretary to the Treasury, for him to discuss this issue further. But as he has said, decisions also need to be made by the Scottish Government, and engagement and support from the Scottish Government and from Transport Scotland will be necessary to deliver the project that he mentions. So I would therefore encourage Scottish Government ministers and officials to engage closely with the Honourable Gentleman to discuss these proposals in more detail. I will do all that I can to support him in fighting for opportunities for growth in his constituency, and I know that both the Secretary of State for Scotland and the Minister for Scotland share this desire. Madam Deputy Speaker, may I once again pay tribute to my honourable friend and to members who have intervened in this debate, and I'm sure they will join with me in agreeing that this is a vital issue that we must get right, to ensure that Scottish coastal communities play their rightful role at the heart of this government's ambitious agenda.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Order, order.